Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2 Samuel, the 3rd chapter, as we see now what is going to transpire after the death of Asahel, right, the brother of Joab, and Abishai, after their battle with Abner. So, continuing in 2 Samuel chapter 3, now there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. And unto David were sons born in Hebron, and his firstborn was Amnon, of Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and his second, Chileab, and Amnon being the name, right, the name of David's son. Remember, I think Ahinoam was his, well, at least one of his first two wives. It was between her and, what's her name? Abigail. And his second, Chileab, of Abigail, the wife of Nabal, the Carmelite. And when it says that, it means that's just the identifying factor, right? She used to be married to Nabal. Obviously, we know what happened to him. He died. And the third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. And the fourth, Adonijah, the son of Haggith. And the fifth, Shephatiah, the son of Abital. And the sixth, Ithream, by Eglah, David's wife. So David had quite the wives. Yeah. Which goes to show you, and you notice, I mean, number one, it goes to show you scripturally, right, that a man can have multiple wives. However, if you notice the kind of instances where you would see this, where if it was a king, right, or a rich man, or somebody of that caliber, where they their household was large, right, they could afford this, right, they could manage and maintain that. But if you're like a poor person, person with just like one sheep, maybe that's not the best thing to try and do, These were born to David in Hebron. And it came to pass, while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul. So Abner was likened onto one of those who, kind of like from the older generations, right? Since he had set up the son of Saul as the basically king over Israel, with the exception of Judah. So he sort of was like, you can imagine, as it says, he made himself strong for the house of Saul. So he was one of the heads, right? The top men, where the people would listen to him, if anything. And that way he was able to translate that kingdom to Ishbosheth. And Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Wherefore hast thou gone in unto my father's concubine?" So he basically accused Abner of sleeping with Saul's concubine. And Abner was very wroth for the words of Ishbosheth, and said, "Am I a dog's head, which against Judah do shew kindness unto thee, or kindness this day unto the house of Saul thy father, to his brethren and to his friends, and have not delivered thee into the hand of David?" So he's basically saying, like, what do you take me for? This whole time, I'm showing you kindness because the kingdom would have gone straight to David, right? But I'm showing you kindness for your father, right? And your brethren and his friends, and in not giving you into the hand of David and fighting for you and leading your armies, that thou chargest me today with a fault concerning this woman, and you're going to turn around and accuse me of this woman here? So do God to Abner and more also, except as the Lord Yahweh hath sworn to David, even so I do to him. So Abner basically said, the Lord destroy him and more if he doesn't establish the kingdom in the hand of David as the Lord said he would do. To translate the kingdom from the house of Saul and set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan even to Beersheba. And this was the Spirit of the Lord that had this happen, because one way or another, the kingdom was going to be David's. And see how simple it was, right? By the Lord having putting the Spirit on Ishbosheth to say this, and just like that, that triggered the full transition of the kingdom from Saul to, or Saul's house to David. And he could not answer Abner a word again because he feared him. So basically, yeah, he was afraid, right? He was afraid of Abner. So he didn't say anything. And Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, "Whose is the land?" Saying also, "Make thy league with me, and behold, my hand shall be with thee, to bring about all Israel unto thee." So when it says whose is the land, in other words, it's saying, isn't this all yours? Aren't, like, technically you're the one destined to be king. So make a pact with me, right? And I'm gonna bring all Israel under your control, under your authority. And he said, "Well, I will make a league with thee." That was David's reply. "But one thing I require of thee." So there's one condition. That is, "Thou shalt not see my face, except thou bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when thou comest to see my face." So I'm not going to meet you unless you bring Saul's daughter to me. And David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, "Deliver me my wife Michal, which I espoused to me for 100 foreskins of the Philistines." Now remember, this David did, that was the dowry that he did pay for Michal, and that was his wife. However, because of the feud between himself and Saul, being that she was Saul's daughter, he ended up, because David fled and he wasn't there anymore. He was now in the, from one area to another, kind of like public enemy, and also dwelling in the land of the Philistines. Saul ended up taking Michal and giving her to another man. But technically, that was still David's wife. So he basically requests for his wife back. And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, meaning the one that Saul ended up giving her to, right? But if you look at it, like I said, on a technical level, David being her first husband, still alive and not having divorced her or deposed her, this would have been kind of like one of those things where in practical sense, yeah, Saul did it, but from a technical standpoint, you know, that second marriage would have sort of been, void really. But anyway, Ishbosheth went and took her from her husband, even from Phaltiel, the son of Laish. And her husband went with her along, weeping behind her to Bahurim. Then said Abner unto him, "Go, return." And he returned. Now, from his perspective, he's like, damn, like he's thinking that you taking my wife away, you know. But as Abner said, Abner basically commanded him, yo, fall back, go back home. And Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, "Ye sought for David in times past to be king over you." All right, so you remember that Abner had set up Ishbosheth over them. However, they desired David to be king. So he's saying, you've inquired, you've requested for him to be king over you, and basically now here's your opportunity. Now then, do it. For the Lord Yahweh hath spoken of David, saying, "By the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines, and out of the hand of all their enemies." So I'm going to set up David king, David as king, and I'm going to use him to lead my people and to deliver them out of the hands of the Philistines and the neighboring nations that have made themselves enemies unto Israel. And Abner also spake in the ears of Benjamin, and Abner went also to speak in the ears of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, and that seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner came to David to Hebron, and 20 men with him. And David made Abner and the men that were with him a feast. And Abner said unto David, I will arise and go, and will gather all Israel unto my lord the king, that they may make a league with thee, and that thou mayest reign over all that thine heart desireth. And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. And behold, the servants of David and Joab came from pursuing a troop. So after Abner left, Joab and the troops of David end up coming back from some raid and brought in a great spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he was gone in peace. So Joab didn't come to meet Abner. When Joab and all the hosts that were with him were come, they told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he hath sent him away, and he is gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king, and said, What hast thou done? Behold, Abner came unto thee. Why is it that thou hast sent him away, and he is quite gone? So why did you let him get away? Thou knowest Abner the son of Ner, that he came to deceive thee, and to know thy going out and thy coming in, and to know all that thou doest. So this guy is not to be trusted. He came here to spy on you. He came to find out, the ins and outs and your dealings. He's not here to befriend you. And when Joab came out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, and brought him again from the well of Sirah, or Sirah. Let's actually look into this name. Who is this? Is it just another name? Let's find out. The turning. Okay. A well or cistern apparently on the road north of Hebron. Cool. So at this point, Joab is upset. He ends up leaving the presence of David, and following his wicked heart, he ends up sending messengers, as it says, to call back Abner. But David knew it not, so this was behind David's back. And when Abner was returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him quietly. So when Abner came back, thinking that David's men or David's messengers had called him back, maybe he forgot something, David wanted to talk about something. So he comes back, and Joab meets him and pulls him to the side right at the entrance, as if he was going to talk to him in private, and smote him there under the fifth rib, that he died for the blood of Asahel, his brother. So he ends up murdering him there, basically catching Abner off guard. And afterward, when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord Yahweh forever from the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. So where this was not, this was not of David's, David didn't make this call, and therefore absolved himself of the guilt of this. As he says, let it rest on the head of Joab. Basically, that blood will be required at the hand or the head of Joab. Nobody else but him and his father's house, because that was all him. And in all his father's house, and let there not fail from the house of Joab one that hath an issue. And when you go into that, like that phrase right there, that issue, the issue is like, it's used in many ways, right? Issue, sometimes it's used in reference to a woman's menstrual cycle, a discharge from a man, a sore, right? But here, yeah, like the NKJV has it as discharge, NLT has it as open sores, NIV running sores. So, some form of defect or a disability to a degree. So David basically put a curse on the house of Joab as well. And says here, or that is a leper, or that leaneth on a staff, i.e., is like has trouble with their legs or something. So today is like one that's in a wheelchair or one that uses crutches. Or that falleth on the sword, that means they die by the sword, or lacketh bread, i.e., they're poor or they're beggars. So once again, he put a curse on the house of Joab for this. So Joab and Abishai his brother slew Abner, because he had slain their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. So they basically went and got revenge for Asahel, which, I mean, technically speaking, it was a battle, and he was warned, but that was not how Joab and Abishai saw it. And David said to Joab and to all the people that were with him, "Rend your clothes and gird you with sackcloth, and mourn before Abner." And King David himself followed the bier. So he basically commanded them to mourn. More than likely, they themselves were not remorseful for it, but that was the king's commandment. And the bier here is it was like the let me actually go into it here, or actually I can just look it up. Bier, it's a funeral. It's what they basically carried the body on the way to the burial place. Right, a bier is a stand or frame used to support a coffin or casket during a funeral ceremony. Um, its primary functions are practical and ceremonial, providing support for viewings and processions and creating a dignified presentation for the deceased. Biers can also be used to carry the body without a casket and have been used historically as wheeled carts or litters. So basically, as they're going on the way to bury Abner at this point, so it's like some time after. It says here, and they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king lamented over Abner, and said, "Died Abner as a fool dieth? Thy hands were not bound, nor thy feet put into fetters. As a man falleth before wicked men, so fellest thou." And all the people wept again over him. So basically, in lamenting, David was saying, Abner didn't die as a fool or as a criminal, right? As it says, your hands were not bound, neither were his feet put into fetters. So it's not like he did something like he was a criminal and he got caught or he was given like a death penalty or anything like that. But rather he died at the hands of wicked men, meaning he fell prey to the wicked devices of wicked men, here referring to Joab and his brother. And when all the people came to cause David to eat meat while it was yet day, David sware, saying, "So do God to me, and more also, if I taste bread or aught else till the sun be down." So he basically vowed, right, until sundown, he wasn't going to eat anything. And that saying, so do God to me, and more also, it's like a it's like saying, "God destroy me if I do this or if I don't do this." And that's, people would say that if they're like fully determined to do something. So he decided he wasn't going to eat, and all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, as whatsoever the king did pleased all the people. So they basically, it pleased them because they were like, you know, they could sense the sincerity, right, of David, that he wasn't feigning himself with crocodile tears, or like he genuinely was mourning the death of Abner, right, which showed them that, as we're gonna read on down, that truly it wasn't David's intent, right? It wasn't him. He didn't have, it wasn't, even though Joab was his one of his captain of his host, it wasn't David's order, right, to have this happen. Verse 37. For all the people and all Israel understood that day that it was not of the king to slay Abner the son of Ner. And the king said unto his servants, Know ye not that there is a prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel? And I am weak, or I am this day weak, though anointed king. And these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. The Lord Yahweh shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. So, in essence, even at the fall of Abner, right, David is saying here, even though he's anointed king, these men are basically too much for him to control, referring to Joab and and his brother. And that's why he basically said, I'll let the Lord handle it and let the Lord basically judge them for this wickedness that they have done. And he said that because Joab knew clearly that it wasn't David's desire for this, and yet he still went and did it anyway. And you can imagine there was probably like, yeah, they acknowledged him as king and they followed his orders, but it was likely also some level of familiarity because they were family, right? And that, makes it, even if it's the slightest bit, it makes it more complicated for them to just like, it's kind of like when Yahushua said that a prophet is not without honor, um, save in his own city, because of that familiarity. NLT says, even though I am the anointed king, these two sons of Zeruiah, Joab and Abishai, are too strong for me to control. So may the Lord repay these evil men for their evil deeds. And that brings us to the end of 2 Samuel, the 3rd chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rechak Kodesh. Until next time, Shalom.